Hello and welcome to part 8 of my Japanese for Beginners series. By the end of this video, you will be able to say some everyday, polite Japanese phrases, particularly used in shopping situations. Anyway, this lesson corresponds with page 58 of the Genki textbook, but even if you don't have that textbook, this video will make perfect sense on its own. But if you have the textbook, you can follow along. では始めましょう。So our first phrase is Xはいかがですか? That means, how would you like some X? Or would you like some X? So X would usually be replaced with something like コーヒーはいかがですか? Would you like some coffee? ケーキはいかがですか? Would you like some cake? Yes, please. はい、お願いします。If you did want some. If you don't want some, though, you say 結構です. That means no, thank you. I've gone over yes and no in previous videos, but yeah, in Japanese, you rarely outright say no. You usually would say no, thank you, or you'd say ちょっと, like, I don't know, man. But 結構です is literally no, thank you. ごめんなさい. This means I am sorry. So we went over in a previous video in part 1 of this series that sumimasen is sort of this universal word that means I'm sorry and thank you and excuse me. But ごめんなさい, it just means I'm sorry. And that's the slightly more polite version of it. But ごめん by itself is more, oh, sorry, like my bad. It's more casual way of saying I'm sorry. お疲れ様でした. Okay, so there are a few variations of this phrase. So お疲れ様でした is like the whole version of this phrase. It's the most polite version. It is the most formal version of the phrase. So お疲れ様でした is one of those phrases we don't really have an equivalent for in English. Literally, what it means is 疲れ comes from the verb 疲れる, which means to be tired. So お疲れ様 means an honorable, tired person, pretty much. And then でした is past tense. So it literally means like you were an honorable, tired person. That's like literally what this phrase means. But what it actually means is like good night. It's basically something you say to your coworkers or your cohorts at school after a hard day's work and you're about to go home, they're about to go home. It's just your way of saying goodbye and usually good night. It has that sort of vibe to it just because it's probably nighttime if you're saying this to people. But yeah, it's something that you say to someone after they have completed a difficult task. It doesn't have to be at the end of a work day. It doesn't have to be at the end of a school day or anything. I remember I went to a meeting early in the morning for this conference in Japan. When I was in Japan, I was going to be basically their like exchange student token white person there, like interjecting things in English into the thing. So the night before, I had been staying at this winter camp, basically in the mountains up in a cabin, and all the other exchange students stayed up all night, and I wanted to sleep, but I couldn't because they were all staying up all night, so I got like 1 hour of sleep. Then I had to leave at like 6 a.m. To drive 2 hours back to this place to have this meeting. I was so incredibly tired. By the time I got home back to my host family, it was 10 a.m. And my host mom was like, 大変お疲れ様でした. So she's like, man, aren't you glad that's over? Hey, I feel for you. Like, good job hanging in there. It's sort of that kind of vibe. Like, I acknowledge that you worked really hard and that you're very tired, and I am sort of thanking you for that and sort of like offering my condolences about that. That's kind of what お疲れ様でした means. So the other variants of this phrase, you can say お疲れ様 without the deshita. The deshita implies like the task is done. Like you were an honorable, tired person and you are done with that task. お疲れ様 it's less like, okay, you finished this task and you're done and you're tired. It's more just, it's a little more casual, like, oh, goodbye from work. And then お疲れ is the most casual way of saying that. And, you know, that's if you're coworkers and you guys are tight and, you know, you're not needing to be too polite or anything, just お疲れ works. ご苦労様でした. So this one is similar to お疲れ様でした. You can also say ご苦労様です. So we will talk about the differences between those two. So ご苦労様でした is very similar to お疲れ様でした. 苦労する is a verb that means to suffer. So gokuro-sama means you are an honorable suffering person. So gokuro-sama deshita. Oh, you were an honorable suffering person. So it is similar to otsukare-sama deshita in that, like, oh, thank you for the work that you have done. So otsukare-sama deshita is more like we were in this together. We were working. It's usually used for like a group of coworkers, a group of students, people who are working on a project together, and then they're parting ways for the end of the workday. Whereas gokuro-sama deshita, it could be like, I hand my report in to my boss. My boss had nothing to do with this report. And then he says, gokuro-sama deshita, like, oh, like, good work, like, good job. I am thanking you, or like, thank you. It's like, thank you for working really hard on this project that I wasn't necessarily involved in. So that's kind of the slight difference between gokuro-sama and otsukare-sama. So gokuro-sama desu, that kind of means like, oh, you're still working on it, and I'm acknowledging that you're working hard on this thing and suffering doing this thing, and I'm kind of thanking you for it. So otsukare-sama desu, that it means like I'm acknowledging, I'm thanking you for your hard work, but you're still working on it, like you haven't finished it yet. So otsukare-sama desu, that's more like if I am your coworker and you're still working and I'm going home already, but you're still there working. I might say otsukare-sama desu, like you're still working really hard, but I'm going, but I thank you and acknowledge that you're tired and working really hard on this thing. So that's kind of the difference between otsukare-sama desu and otsukare-sama deshita. So the difference between desu and deshita with gokuro-sama is similar to the usages of it with otsukare. Ohisashiburi desu. So, ohisashiburi desu. It's often followed by a ne to make it softer. We're going to go over that in a future video quite soon in this series. But ohisashiburi desu, that means it has been a long time since I've seen you. Oh, so good to see you again. It's been a while. Hi again. It's that vibe to it. So if you haven't seen someone in maybe a couple weeks or more, you'd say ohisashiburi desu. You can just say ohisashiburi if you're being plain and casual, but ohisashiburi desu is the polite version. O genki desu ka? So I'm kind of surprised we didn't go over this in the first video. I forgot to put it in, and it wasn't in the Genki textbook in that section. So yeah, Genki, the title of the textbook that this series is based off of. Genki means to be well, like healthy, but it also means to be lively or cheerful. So o genki, you use that when you're talking about other people, not yourself. I would never say watashi wa o genki desu. Like that's rude to like make it honorable for myself, but it's o genki when I'm talking about you or other people. So if I'm saying o genki desu ka, you might remember from the desu ka video, that means I'm asking a question. It means, how are you? Literally, it means, are you doing well? Are you lively? Are you healthy? That's what it literally means, but it's basically, how are you? You can also ask genki desu ka. It doesn't have to be o genki desu ka. O genki is more polite, and then you can just say o genki. And you can also just say genki. So there's lots of different levels of politeness with that. O genki desu ka is the most polite version of that. And then if you are doing well, you could answer genki desu. Is like the softer version of hai. It's less like hai at attention. It's more yes, I'm doing well. O sewa ni narimashita, narimasu, and nattemasu. So I'm going to go over the various differences here. This is getting slightly, we're jumping ahead a little bit into verb conjugation, which we'll be learning a few videos in the future from this one. But here's a little sneak peek about how verbs are conjugated with this phrase. So o sewa ni narimashita, I'd say is probably the more commonly used one. It's the one that you would want to use to impress people. So o sewa ni narimashita is basically a way of thanking your host family, usually somebody who has let you stay with them, or who has let you like stay with them and learned with them for a period of time. So it's like if I stay the night like one night at a person's place, it would be a little weird to say osewa ni narimashita. But yeah, if I stay with people for a few days, for a few weeks, for a few months, definitely, when I'm saying goodbye, osewa ni narimashita is a way of saying thank you for taking me in. I learned a lot. You helped me a lot. That kind of vibe to it. Because osewa is like to be in the care of. So osewa ni narimashita literally means like I was in your care, but it actually means thank you, like for taking care of me. You were a gracious host, sort of thing. So that's what you say like after it's happened, after you've stayed with these people for a month and you're saying goodbye. Osewa ni narimasu. That's kind of something that you say before that's all going to happen. Like you're meeting your host family for the first time. A good thing to say would be osewa ni narimasu. You're acknowledging you're going to help me. I'm going to be in your care and I'm grateful for this. So that's kind of what that means. It's like, thank you for letting me stay with you. Osewa ni nattemasu. That means it's still happening. I am currently in their care. So I would most likely use that like in an actual sentence. I wouldn't just kind of say that by itself. But osewa ni nattemasu, that means like I'm currently staying with so-and-so. And as I said, this isn't necessarily restricted to like when you're staying at somebody's house. It can also be like if I were learning the trade of candle making from an artisan in Japan for a month. I'm not staying with them necessarily, but maybe they were training me for a while in how to make candles. And like at the beginning, I might say osewa ni narimasu. At the end, when I'm saying thank you for helping me, osewa ni narimashita, like thank you for caring for me and helping me. But I'd say it's most commonly used for like when you're staying with people. 失礼します and 失礼しました. So 失礼 means rude, basically a rudeness. So 失礼します means literally I am committing a rudeness. I am being rude. But what it functionally means is excuse me. So if I'm coming into a room with like a tray full of biscuits and tea, I could say 失礼します, like excuse me, coming in. 失礼しました, that is kind of like I'm sorry actually. It's like I'm so sorry I committed this terrible rudeness. So if I walk into the room with the tea and biscuits and I come on two people making out, I wasn't expecting that, and I'm bothering them. I'm like, 失礼しました, and then I leave the room like, oh, pardon me. So I have committed a rudeness, past tense. That's what 失礼しました is. ありがとうございました. So we covered arigato and arigato gozaimasu, but arigato gozaimashita, as you might have gathered from the way these other verbs have been conjugating, if it ends in shita instead of in a su, then it is the past tense. So arigato gozaimasu is thank you, just thank you, basically. Arigato gozaimashita has a more final tone to it. It is thank you for what you have done. So it has kind of that osewa ni narimashita vibe to it. It's like, thank you for this thing that you have done that you are finished doing. And so it's something that you say like kind of at the end of something. Ojama shimasu, ojama shitemasu, and ojama shimashita. So this again is a little lesson in verb conjugation. We're kind of getting ahead of ourselves here. So ojama means to bother, basically. So as you can see, the Japanese language has a lot of their culture in there where there's this big thing about like bothering people, being a burden, being ashamed. You don't want to bother other people or make their lives difficult in any way. Like it's all about making the group and making everyone feel comfortable, helping people save face. It's all that kind of thing. So ojama literally means to bother people, but it's actually used to visit people, basically. So you're intruding, you're bothering. That's what visiting is. And as an introvert, I thoroughly endorse this word usage. So anyway, ojama shimasu is what you say when you're coming into somebody's house to visit. As you're walking, you've probably heard that if you've watched anime. As you're coming through the genkan, the door entrance, and you're taking off your shoes, you say ojama shimasu, like I'm coming in. So there's no real English equivalent here. It's just something they say when they're entering a house of somebody that they're visiting. So we just wouldn't really say anything in English necessarily there, except like, thanks for having me over, or, oh, you have a lovely home. we don't say anything really like ojamashimasu when we're walking into a room. So ojamashitemasu, that is kind of like if I were visiting some people and I were sitting at a table and we were having tea, and then Otosan, the patriarch of the unit, he was not there when I came into the house, but then he walks into the room, and then Okaa-san is like, "Ah, this is Sarah, she's visiting." And then I wave and I say, "Ojama shitemasu." It's basically a way of saying ojama shimasu, like, but he wasn't there when I said ojama shimasu, so it's like, I'm kind of like, yes, I am visiting, I am bothering you. So it's something that you say when you're kind of already visiting, but then like another person comes in after you've already come in, this other person who like lives there maybe, and then you're saying, oh, hi, basically. Ojama shimashita, that's what you say after you leave, basically. So it's like, thanks for having me over. We should do this again sometime, kind of like that. Onegai shimasu. So I think I slipped this into the very beginning of the video when I was talking about keiki wa ikaga desu ka? Hai, onegai shimasu. So onegai shimasu literally means please do. But it's very versatile. Onegai shimasu is like if you want someone to do something for you, say onegai shimasu, basically. It's like, please get me this piece of cake, please mend this pair of pants for me, please do this thing for me. Onegai shimasu basically covers all of your bases there. If you want to be more specific, of course, you can add more words before onegai shimasu, but onegai shimasu basically is just a universal please, please do this thing for me. You can take off the shimasu and just onegai, and that just means please. And it is less polite, less formal. Dozo. So dozo is a really nice word. You'll probably hear it more than you'll have opportunities to say it if you're a guest in Japan. Whenever anyone hands something to you, like a piece of cake, dozo, it's like, here you go. Or if they gesture, they're escorting you somewhere and they say dozo, that means like, this way, please, dozo. Or if they pull out a chair for you and they say dozo, that means have a seat. So it's basically please, but more like go ahead or here you go. Domo. So domo is a more casual but still pretty polite way of saying thank you. And it's easier to say than arigato. I'd say domo is like, I don't know, to me it feels a little more common than arigato actually. It rolls off the tongue so much easier than arigato. So domo is great. And domo, another cool thing about domo is it means thanks, but it also kind of means hello. So you can kind of say it to somebody in passing, like, ah, domo! Like if you're kind of passing by, like on your bicycle and someone else is passing by, and then like, it's maybe your mailman or something, and you're like, ah, domo! It's like, oh, like, thanks for being my mailman, and hello. At the same time, basically. So domo, it kind of has an all-purpose vibe to it, but usually it just means thanks. Do itashimashite. So that means you're welcome. We went over iet before as you're welcome, and that I'd say is more common than do itashimashite, but do itashimashite is more like formal way. So if you really want to say, ah, you're welcome, and be very formal about it, then do itashimashite. And someone in my exchange student group remembered this as it sounds similar to don't touch your mustache. So if you need a way to remember it, don't touch your mustache. Kudasai. So this also means please, but unlike onegai shimasu means like please do this thing, whereas kudasai is more like please give me something. So this works really well like if you're ordering something at a restaurant or if you're like wanting to buy something, you can always say kore o kudasai, like I will have this please, and the this is you're like pointing to something on the menu, or you're pointing to the plastic or the wax food display, or you're pointing to a dress. You can just say kore o kudasai and point to something, and that's like, please get me this thing. But kudasai, yeah, it means like just please give me this thing, basically. But you can also add it to a host of other verbs to make it please do this verb, please do that verb. We haven't covered verbs really yet in this series though, so later. Chotto! ... So as I mentioned earlier in this video, Japanese people don't like saying no. So they'll say chotto. Chotto literally means a little. But if you're answering, like if somebody asks you a yes or no question, and you're like, ah, chotto, you're kind of saying like, oh, well, gee. And it's kind of their roundabout way of tactfully saying no to something. So if somebody offers you some natto or some like Japanese pickles or something that you hate, and you're like, yeah, chotto, that's how you'd say, oh, no, I don't like that. Because you wouldn't flat out say, I don't like that, ew, no, because that's rude. And and so all those things are just kind of speech fillers. And is more like if you're trying to think of a word, you can say and that gives you time to think of the next word. So that's extremely useful. It works kind of as like but it also works as sort of an excuse me if you want to get someone's attention, like So sumimasen is definitely more formal, but is a little more casual. And it's also sort of telegraphing, like, I'm about to say something. It's not necessarily excuse me. It can be like if you're having a conversation with somebody and you want to just, like, you're talking about the weather, and then you want to suddenly talk about, like, getting married or something, and you, like, want to bring it up. You're like, like, I'm going to say something else. And so there's a slight difference between those two. It's kind of hard to tell for beginners, but the means yes and means no. So notice that for yes has one hiragana u in it, whereas which is no, has two hiragana u's. So listen closely. So one of them is shorter and the other one is It kind of does that with the pitch. So that's kind of how you can tell the difference between those two. It's like in English we have and very, very similar, which is lovely. Having yes and no sound almost exactly the same. That's not at all confusing, but Japanese has that too. So and you'll find when you go to Japan, like it's the land of grunting. Everyone says like all the time. Like while they're listening to you, they go It means like, yes, yes, I'm listening. So they say that a lot. Not as much, but they say that a lot, all the time. Omiyage. So this isn't a phrase, this is just a concept. So in Japan, you probably know this, they give gifts a lot. And an omiyage specifically is a gift that you give when you're visiting somebody. So, you know, to show respect for them, like they're letting you into your home, so you are bringing them a gift to show your appreciation. And or like you'll often bring them something like some cookies or a cake or, you know, something that you all can share while you are visiting. So it's like you're not really putting them out by forcing them to feed you. You're bringing them some food so that they can serve it to you and you can all share it together, and they don't have to really be inconvenienced having to provide you with something to eat because you brought it. So omiyage is that. It is the gift that you bring. And then when you bring it, this is a more traditional old school thing to say, but I'm putting it in here because it tickles me pink. I love this phrase. Tsumaranai mono desu ga. So tsumaranai means boring. Mono means thing. And then the ga at the end, desu ga, it kind of means but. So this is a boring thing, but ... is literally what tsumaranai mono desu ga means. So it's a way of just like, again, Japanese people, like they kind of put themselves down a lot to lift up other people. And it's not like this bad self-esteem thing, really. It's about making other people look good and feel good and being respectful to other people. So you're saying, this isn't much. It's just a little something I brought over for you. It's that sort of vibe to it. But literally they're saying, this is a boring thing, or trifling really in this context. Trifling is kind of more what it means rather than boring. Irashaimase. So when you go into a shop to buy manga, as you do when you go to Japan, or when you go into any kind of establishment or restaurant, a store of any kind, they will say irashaimase. It's just a thing that they say. It doesn't really mean anything. It means welcome. But, you know, we don't say that in the States, at least. We don't say, welcome to my store. But you'll hear it everywhere, like any time you go shopping anywhere. Irashaimase, irashaimase. Even on like the loudspeaker system, I'd hear it all the time. It means like, welcome to our store, like have a good time shopping. It's just things that merchants say. Ikura desu ka? Or kore wa ikura desu ka? So ikura desu ka means how much does this cost? So kore wa ikura desu ka? Kore, like if you're holding, like this thing that I'm holding. If you remember from our Koso Ado video. Oh crap, that's the next video. So in the very next video that comes after this, I explain kore along with other words just like that, but we have covered kore in a previous video. So kore is this. So if I'm pointing to something, kore wa ikura desu ka, it means how much is this? Like if I'm pointing to a menu or if I'm pointing to a dress or something. So kore wa ikura desu ka? How much does this cost? Kore o kudasai. So combining the kudasai from earlier with this, you can point kore o kudasai, please get me this, or kore o onegai shimasu, please get this for me, please do this for me. So those are two very useful phrases if you want to order something or buy something. Daijoubu desu or daijoubu desu ka? So the question, daijoubu desu ka, means are you okay? And if you want to answer yes, I'm okay, daijoubu desu. So daijoubu means okay, basically. All right, not harmed, everything is going well. That's more like are you okay as in like, not are you healthy okay, but like, you know, like if you fell down and you tripped and you fell down, someone might ask, daijoubu desu ka? Or daijoubu? And you answer, daijoubu. Like, yes, I'm okay. Or if my boyfriend just like yelled at me and then stormed out of the room, then my friend might ask, daijoubu? Like, are you okay? And then I'd be like, daijoubu. If I am daijoubu, if I'm not daijoubu, I wouldn't answer that, would I now? But anyway, yeah, daijoubu means I'm okay. That's a very commonly used phrase, and daijoubu desu ka or daijoubu as a question, also very commonly used. Are you okay? Ganbatte and ganbatte kudasai and ne. So ne makes it friendly, basically. Again, we'll get into ne and other sentence enders in a couple more videos in the future. But anyway, ganbatte kudasai means, again, it's a thing we don't quite have in English. Ganbaru means to work very hard, to try very hard, to struggle, but to persevere and to keep doing something. So ganbatte kudasai means please. If you remember the kudasai, it means please try hard, please struggle, please hang in there. But really, it's a way of saying good luck. If you just say ganbatte or ganbatte kudasai, it means good luck with this task that you're going to do, with this challenge you're about to do. And then if you say ganbarimasu, or ganbaru. You've probably heard anime characters, if you watch anime, say that a lot, like ganbaru. It means I'll try my best. So it's actually kind of a roundabout way of saying, yeah, no. It's like if someone asks, like, can you have this report done by tomorrow? And I'll be like, ganbarimasu. It's like, yeah, I'll try, but no. So I remember we asked our exchange student from Japan that I had when we were 7 or 8, like, how do you say no in Japanese? Because she's like, oh, we don't really say no. And we're like, how do you say no? And she said, I'll do my very best. And that's basically what ganbarimasu is. But it doesn't always mean that passive aggressive, yeah, no, I'll try, but no, fat chance. It does mean like, I will try. I'm going to hang in there. Like, thank you for your vote of confidence. Ganbarimasu. You'll hear like athletes and stuff say that a lot. Celebrities will say that a lot before they do some kind of challenge. Ganbarimasu. Like, I'll give it my all. I've got this. So before we review this lesson, if you want to see more of this series, consider supporting it on Patreon. I've got 2 tiers. I have the Juku tier, which is the $19 a month tier, and at that tier, you get a weekly study guide as well as 4 worksheets per week so that you can practice all of these things that I cover in the videos. You send me the worksheets filled out, I correct them, I grade them with notes that are personalized, and I send them back to you. So that's a really good deal if you really want to enrich yourself and like treat this series like a class. If that's a little too rich for your blood, but you just want the study guides and you just want to support this series and vote with your dollars, consider joining at the Genki tier, which is just $2 a month, and for that you get the weekly study guides, which basically breaks down everything I do in this videos in written form. So it's a really nice resource that you can have physically to look at on your computer screen to review on your own. Now on to the review. If you've been following this series so far, you probably have learned that, okay, I repeat the phrase 3 times and then you can practice it, but this video is already 30 minutes long. As we're learning more and more words and phrases, our sentences, our model sentences are going to get longer and longer, and rather than sit and say the phrase 3 times very slowly into the camera and wait, I instead am going to do a new system where I'm going to say each phrase just once, and then I'm going to provide timestamps in the video description and or a pinned comment. So you can look at any phrase that you want and just click that timestamp and it'll jump right to that part where I'm saying that phrase. And then that way you can practice at your own speed and you can practice the phrase as many times or as few times as you want to practice that phrase. X はいかがですか? 結構です。ごめんなさい。お疲れ様です。お疲れ様でした。ご苦労様です。ご苦労様でした。お久しぶりです。お元気ですか? ええ、元気です。お世話になりました。お世話になります。お世話になってます。失礼します。失礼しました。ありがとうございました。お邪魔します。お邪魔しました。お邪魔してます。お願いします。どうぞ。どうも。どういたしまして。ください。ちょっと、お土産。つまらないものですが。いらっしゃいませ。いくらですか? これはいくらですか? これをください。これをお願いします。大丈夫ですか? 大丈夫です。頑張ってください。頑張ります。Thanks for watching. The next video of this series I have actually made already a few months ago. It works on the ko, so, a, do words. So that video already exists. Go check it out. I have changed the thumbnail to kind of make it match the series a little bit, so it's gonna be slightly different than the format of these videos. But yeah, to learn about the ko, so, a, do words, go check out that video. In the next video after that in the series, we're going to cover particle mo. Thank you to all of my patrons at the Genki tier, at the Juku tier, and all the other tiers who help make this video and other video series on this channel possible. If you feel like you're at the intermediate level and you want a little more advanced instruction in Japanese, check out my other playlists. I have one where I teach Japanese based off of episode 1 of Sailor Moon. I've broken the entire episode down word for word to teach the Japanese language. And I also have a series where I teach Japanese through anime songs and the like. So until my next video in this Japanese for Beginners series, mata ne!